Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. Canada's federal party leaders hit the campaign trail once again, and this time the focus was on affordable housing. Lethbridge Conservative candidate Rachel Harder has laid out her platform at a recent campaign launch. And U.S. President Joe Biden says his government is committing to a deadline of August 31st of pulling out of Afghanistan as evacuations continue to surge out of Kabul.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. Liberal leader Justin Trudeau says his party plans to make purchasing a home easier across Canada. Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole and NDP leader Jagmeet Singh said the housing crisis has actually worsened since the Liberals have been in power.
Over the past number of years, hundreds of thousands of families have gotten new homes, have a safer place to live. We've cut down on chronic homelessness because of the national housing strategy we launched in 2017. But let's remember, in 2015, 2017, as we launched that national housing strategy, we were starting from a standing start. Because for the previous 10 years, a Conservative government decided the federal government had no role to play in housing. That is wrong. That's why we stepped up and saw tremendous improvements in supporting people to get housing over the past number of years.
Mr. Trudeau's had 6 years and has failed. We have the housing crisis has exploded in the last 3-4 years under his leadership. He has had programs that have been ineffective in terms of affordable housing, in terms of programs for first-time homebuyers. That's why in Canada's recovery plan, I put forward a detailed and serious plan to tackle the housing crisis.
Justin Trudeau recently made a housing announcement, and I want to say very clearly that after 6 years of Justin Trudeau being Prime Minister, the conditions of housing, the housing crisis has only gotten worse. Housing has become more expensive, renting has become more expensive. Canadians can't afford another 4 years of broken promises from Justin Trudeau on housing.
Now, another issue in this election campaign is health care. The Trudeau Liberals are blasting the Conservatives, saying the Tories are all about for-profit health care. Political reporter Brian Lilly says that's not true, and Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole really needs to double down on that point.
Where he has problems is the issue that the Liberals tried to knock him on, and that is private delivery of healthcare. He's got a very good answer. You know, he's got to lean into it the way Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe did, and that is in saying, look, I'm not against private delivery of healthcare services like the private MRI clinics that have a 2-for-1 deal. For every 2 MRIs they do, they have to do one for the public sector. That's what they did in Saskatchewan. It cleared a backlog of more than 10,000 MRIs. That's like, how is that a bad thing? That's a good thing.
Mr. Lilly will have more on the federal election campaign. That's coming up after business news. Lethbridge Conservative candidate Rachel Harder announced her campaign launch on Tuesday and welcomed supporters inside of her constituency office. Harder says she's been busy door knocking and listening to many concerns of her constituents here in Lethbridge.
Mental health, that's a big one, whether it's for children or adults alike, making sure that there's appropriate services available, and especially because of the pandemic, it exacerbated the situation for sure. Another concern that I'm hearing at the door is just overall economic recovery. Certainly people are concerned about the jobs that have been lost, and just our overall economic well-being. So the fact that Trudeau's taken on significant debt load, the fact that he continues to take on significant debt, the fact that they're looking at taxes being raised. Canadians are already feeling the crunch and having a hard time affording normal life.
Harder says she will continue to be an advocate for our community to ensure our voices are heard in Ottawa if she's re-elected on September the 20th. With the municipal election coming in October, the Alberta government announced 2 new ballot questions will be included. One is the controversial equalization payments and how Alberta has been getting a raw deal. A new third-party advertisement has been created. It's called the Vote Yes to End Equalization campaign to raise awareness of what the wording on the ballot question actually means and to get Albertans to vote yes. MLA for Cypress Medicine Hat Drew Barnes says he supports the campaign as a way to help Albertans.
When you look at the bigger picture, though, the fact that $25 billion a year leaves Alberta at a time where we're not at full capacity and we're not doing well. Secondly, when you look at parts of the rest of Canada receive the equalization benefits and in an unfair equation, in an unfair situation. And we're asking Albertans to stand together and vote yes to end equalization so Alberta can be free and prosperous and our families and communities can be stronger.
Equalization payments are cash payments from Ottawa to the provinces with the objective of offsetting differences in available revenue or in the cost of providing services. It's not necessarily a title that Lethbridge should be proud of. Stats Canada has ranked our city at the top of the Crime Severity Index for 2020. Well, we have the opportunity to sit down with mayoral candidate Stephen Mogden to get his take on crime in our city.
I think that the same Crime Severity Index report that was just released also shows that things are improving in Lethbridge in terms of benchmarking us from this year compared to last year, and then looking forward, we need to assess what the effect of bringing in a new police chief and having him get his legs under him and the department working as he wants it to be working, the effect that that's going to have as well. But greater than that, Hal, I think we need to make sure that we are making a serious attempt to provide support for people in our community. We have a lot of people that struggle with various issues, and crime tends to stem from those issues, the mental health issues, the addictions issues. That's really why those crime activities take place.
Catch the full interview with mayoral candidate Stephen Mogden discussing why he wants to become the new mayor of Lethbridge coming up in the second half of our program. Lethbridge City Council voted unanimously to approve the industrial land sales policy for industrial land within the city limits. Developers have 5 years to create a development plan, or else the city has the right to reacquire the undeveloped commercial land at the original selling price. Mayor Chris Spearman says the new policy will save taxpayers money and will help to create jobs in the city.
What we want to do is make sure when we sell land, we sell it to entities that want to develop the land, build something, and create employment. People who want to add to economic development. We don't want land frozen and have employment created quickly as well. So we get the investment through the construction and then the ongoing contribution to the economy.
Spearman adds, land that has been previously purchased won't be affected by the new policy. Lethbridge City Council voted to approve a permanent proclamation of an annual Sisters in Spirit Day on October the 4th. It would honor missing and murdered Indigenous women and children. Now, for 15 years, a collaboration of Lethbridge organizations and individuals have organized and planned the Sisters in Spirit Vigil. Councillor Belinda Crowson, who sponsored the motion, says the proclamation shows the city's continued support for Sisters in Spirit.
It shows an ongoing commitment that this is an issue of value and importance to this council, but to the community and to ongoing councils as well. There was a series of recommendations came to council in January, and one of the recommendations was that it become a permanent declaration. So this was brought forward on behalf of the Reconciliation Lethbridge Advisory Committee and Sisters in Spirit. And so I've been in conversation with members of the committee, and they asked that it be brought forward.
This is the first proclamation Lethbridge City Council has enacted as an ongoing declaration, unlike other proclamations which need to be passed with a majority consent on a yearly basis. The Kindness to Others Renewal and Healing Centre is holding 2 28-day recovery camps for those who are looking to kick addiction in the Blackfoot Confederacy. The camps will include traditional healing ceremonies which will be held in areas of the Blood Tribe. Alvin Mills, the group's founder, says this is a great way to help those battling addictions and allow for more healing.
I've been doing this frontline work for years now. I've seen a lot of things. I would have to say right now, the opioid crisis is the worst it's ever been at this point. The fatalities have been going up. Overdoses have been going up. Our Indigenous population in Lethbridge has been going up. And in this setting where it's healthy, then they could start addressing the trauma, the grief. Those are the root causes.
Mills says recovery camps like this have never been attempted before on the Blood Tribe. He says he's looking forward to the healing that will ensue for those who need it the most. The Alberta Union of Provincial Employees is filing formal policy grievances against employers, including the AHS, for refusing to acknowledge the newly created National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, September 30th. The AUPE says many employers with AUPE members have collective agreements which compel employers to acknowledge holidays created by Ottawa, but some are not honoring the new holiday. Union officials say employers that are refusing to acknowledge the holiday include the AHS, Covenant Health, Points West Living, and the Alberta Gaming, Liquor and Cannabis Commission. Local business owners will pitch their ideas in a Dragon's Den-style event to try and win an office space for their new business. As Micah Quinn explains now, there is big money to be had for one lucky recipient.
Emily Chong is the marketing coordinator for the Downtown Lethbridge BRZ, and she says the Building Business Downtown project is the first of its kind for the centre.
We're hoping to pair local entrepreneurs with local landlords in our downtown core. So there'll be up to 6 spaces available that these local entrepreneurs can choose from. They'll submit their applications. They're open on Monday, and they have until September 15th to submit. It's kind of a business plan application, so to prove that they are a viable business and they can support themselves in this process. And then on October 20th, they'll present and pitch their business plan to our Downtown Dragons, which are local landlords in the downtown core.
The winner will receive $12,000 that they will be able to put towards rent for the year.
They'll also receive an hour marketing session with London Road Media. They'll receive a free enrollment with our Smart Start program through Community Futures, and some other fun prizing. This business is all about kind of inspiring entrepreneurs to take that next step, and we're here to support them in taking those next steps and into moving these brick and mortar stores. So it'll definitely improve the vibrancy and the variety and just make downtown a place that people want to be in.
You can find the application online by visiting downtownlethbridge.com/buildingbusiness. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
Alberta Health Services has issued a boil water advisory for the village of Foremost. AHS says all residents in the area are advised to bring water to a boil for at least 1 minute prior to any consumption. That includes drinking, cleaning raw foods, preparing infant formula, and making ice. You don't have to boil the water for bathing or washing clothes. AHS says the advisory is in effect until further notice. Alberta and Saskatchewan say they have no plans to follow BC and Manitoba in bringing back the mandatory use of masks in indoor places. The mask mandates were reimposed following a rise in COVID-19 cases. Health officials in both Alberta and Saskatchewan say vaccination is the most effective route out of the pandemic. If you're wanting to take in an Edmonton Oilers home game this season, you'll need proof of vaccination or a negative COVID-19 test result. Oilers Entertainment Group says the policy will begin with the first preseason game on September the 28th and will continue until the foreseeable future. It also says all employees, volunteers, and contractors must be fully vaccinated at least 14 days before September 28th in order to work at Rogers Place. The announcement came a day after Calgary Sports and Entertainment announced a mandatory vaccination policy for those attending NHL, WHL, and other live events at the Olympic Saddledome. The Saskatchewan Teachers Federation wants mandatory COVID-19 vaccination for eligible students and staff. When classes resume in the fall, most elementary schools in Regina and Saskatoon will require masks for students. It will not, however, be the case for high schoolers. Federation President Patrick Mays says he wants COVID-19 vaccinations to be a condition of employment for teachers mandated by the province. The Saskatchewan government says it has identified a COVID-19 testing issue that led to what it describes as a large number of invalid results. It says the issue at a lab specifically impacts positive test results at several Regina long-term care facilities. The province says the results have been classified as false positives after residents of the facilities were retested. The news comes a day after the Saskatchewan Health Authority imposed tight restrictions on visitors at Regina's long-term care homes after confirmed or suspected COVID-19 outbreaks at 7 facilities. Manitoba Premier Brian Pallister is refusing to commit to staying on the job until a successor is chosen. The PC party has set a leadership vote for October the 30th, but Pallister would only say today that he will give it all he's got for as long as he can. So far, former Health Minister Heather Stephenson is the only person to declare her intention to seek the leadership. Recent flooding in rural Tennessee has killed more than 20 people. Among those who died were a pair of 7-month-old twins. Matthew Rigney and Daniel Hall described how the water began to rage through their apartment where the family was sheltered.
Woke up and water was filling our apartment, and then our front door, the glass shattered in the screen, and water is raging through our house. I had the twins in my arms like this. I had Brayla kind of on my hip like that, and I had Malia wrapped around my neck. And then the water, when it hit us, and it just pulled us under, all of us, and we were trapped underneath the bed. I wish there was something I could have done. I wish I would have just stayed there. I didn't know if the whole house was about to collapse on us.
Through the trees, I seen him get on the roof, and I didn't see my babies, and I was screaming, please tell me that they're alive.
That was one thing I did not want to, I dreaded telling my wife, was that I didn't have all four, like I failed them.
Wow, so sad. The U.S. military has pulled off its biggest day of evacuation flights in Afghanistan since the operation first began. The Biden administration says the deadline for evacuations is August the 31st.
We are just 3 weeks away from the 20th anniversary of 9/11. At no time should America ever bend or allow the Taliban to tell us when we have to stop bringing Americans out. We should stay until every single American is able to get out of Afghanistan. And we should use every recourse possible to make that happen. And we should not negotiate it. We should explain that this is what is going to happen, and anybody in our way to stop us from bringing an American out will be in danger.
U.S. President Joe Biden says he's keeping his August 31st deadline for completing the airlifts of Americans and allies seeking to escape Taliban-controlled Afghanistan.
We are currently on a pace to finish by August the 31st. The sooner we can finish, the better. Each day of operations brings added risk to our troops. But the completion by August 31st depends upon the Taliban continuing to cooperate and allow access to the airport for those who we're transporting out and no disruptions to our operations. In addition, I've asked the Pentagon and the State Department for contingency plans to adjust the timetable should that become necessary. I'm determined to ensure that we complete our mission, this mission.
Well, it was another beautiful day in the Windy City, lots of blue sky and sunshine, and that trend will continue for the short term. Complete weather details are coming up. It was a great day for a bike ride or even a hike through the coulees. Jeanette Rocher is back with a complete look at the weather forecast. Jeanette, the 20-degree plus temperatures will continue until at least Friday?
Yeah, that's right. We are looking at a high of 23 degrees tomorrow with lots of sunshine. Then temperatures down to 18 degrees on Friday with a 30% chance of showers. On Saturday, we're looking at the temperatures climbing again back up to 23 with a mix of sun and clouds. Should be a lovely day on a Sunday under sunny skies. 27 the high, 24 on Monday with sunshine as well, and a mix of sun and cloud on Tuesday with a high of only 20 degrees. So we're certainly seeing temperatures now drop down below the average high for this time of year, getting out down into the teens sometimes. Average high for this time of year, 24, average low, 9 degrees. Look at that. In 1996, we had our highest temperature on this day, which was 35 degrees, and it was a chilly -1 back in 1992. Our sun rose this morning at 6:39 a.m., sunset this evening, 8:28 p.m., giving us just a little less than 14 hours of daylight, so days certainly getting shorter. 60% chance of showers. Victoria tomorrow in the afternoon, 18 degrees the high, 19 in Vancouver with a 30% chance of showers beginning in tomorrow morning and continuing throughout the afternoon. Sunshine in Edmonton tomorrow, 24 degrees, 22 in Calgary tomorrow under sunny skies. Should be a little bit of mix and cloud tomorrow afternoon. 22 the high in Saskatchewan with sunny skies, 19 in Regina, mix of sun and cloud, partly cloudy skies. Also in Winnipeg tomorrow with a high of 16 degrees. Now, looking at the central part of the country, we're seeing a lot of heat and a lot of humidity as there is a heat warning in effect for this area. 32 degrees the high for both Toronto and Ottawa, 33 the high in Montreal. Montreal seeing a 30% chance of showers tomorrow as well. High humidexes in that area as well, high of 41, 40, 39 in that area. Fredericton also high of 32 tomorrow. Seeing also a heat warning there, both there and in Halifax tomorrow. A chance of showers tomorrow in Fredericton, lots of sunny skies in Halifax. Showers expected tomorrow in Charlottetown with a high of 28 and 17 the high in St. John's, Newfoundland tomorrow with partly cloudy skies. So there you have it. That is your forecast.
An insurance industry group says the devastating floods in Western Germany last month caused damage to the tune of $10.4 billion Canadian. More than 180 people died in Germany, and hundreds more were injured in the mid-July floods, which also claimed lives in neighboring Belgium. The German government has agreed to provide $44.5 billion to help rebuild regions hit by the devastating floods. Delta Airlines says it will not impose a mandatory COVID-19 vaccination policy for employees. It will, however, charge unvaccinated workers on the company health plan $200 per month. Company officials say the fee is necessary because the average hospital stay for the virus costs the airline $40,000. Delta also says it will require weekly testing for unvaccinated employees beginning next month. It is not going as far as United Airlines, which will require employees to get vaccinated by late September or lose their jobs altogether. Royal Bank says its third quarter profit was up 34% from a year ago to $4.3 billion. RBC says adjusted earnings totaled $3 per diluted share. That tops the $2.71 analysts were expecting. Revenue was $12.8 billion compared with $12.9 billion last year. The results came as the bank reversed $540 million of its provisions for credit losses. In the same quarter last year, it set aside $675 million for credit losses. Canadian e-commerce company Shopify says businesses will be able to add a shopping tab to their TikTok profiles to create a mini storefront linking directly to their online store for checkout. The shopping tool is so far available to merchants in the United States and the UK and may be rolling out to Canada as well soon. Shopify already had a deal with TikTok that let merchants create ads to drive customers to their online stores. Now, here's a look at today's markets.
The TSX was up 39 points to 20,587. The Dow was also up 39 points to 35,405. The S&P 500 was up 9 points to 4,496. The Nasdaq was up 22 points to 15,042. West Texas Intermediate oil was up 82 cents to 68.36 US per barrel. Natural gas was even at $3.90 US. Gold was up a penny to $17.91 US an ounce, and silver was even at $23.84 US an ounce. Wheat is at $415 per metric ton. Barley is at $412, canola $905, and corn is at $435 per metric ton. Live cattle were down $1.38 to $124.43. Feeder cattle were up 73 cents to $159.30. Lean hogs were up $1.78 to $88.75, and the Canadian dollar was down slightly over the past 24 hours to finish at $79.42 US.
Recapping one of our top stories this hour, Lethbridge City Council voted to approve a permanent proclamation of an annual Sisters in Spirit Day on October the 4th. The vigil would honor missing and murdered Indigenous women and children. This is the first proclamation Lethbridge City Council has enacted as an ongoing declaration. Political reporter Brian Lilly says the federal Conservatives under leader Aaron O'Toole stand a good chance of winning on September the 20th. Mr. Lilly will explain why shortly. But first, here's a look what's happening in and around your community.
Here's your Bridge City News Community Calendar. Lethbridge Sport Council's Outdoor Roving Gyms program is taking place Tuesdays at Henderson Lake Park and Thursdays behind Nicholas Sharon Arena from 10 to 11 a.m. This program is for kids ages 5 and under and their caregivers. Come and enjoy an hour of fun and get active. Pre-registration is required and space is limited. For details and to register, visit lethbridgesportcouncil.ca/rovinggyms. Discover how Lethbridge has played an important military role in the preservation of world peace and security by visiting the Lethbridge Military Museum at the Vimy Ridge Armory at the Lethbridge Airport. The museum is open to the public each Wednesday from noon to 4 p.m. Special arrangements for other days and times can be made by calling 403-892-6531. Admission is free, but donations are gratefully accepted. For information, go to lethbridgemilitarymuseum.org. And that's your Bridge City News Community Calendar.
Campaigning continues for federal party leaders as we draw closer to the September 20th federal election, and apparently things have not been going very well for the Trudeau Liberals. To talk about this in more detail is political reporter and Toronto Sun columnist, Mr. Brian Lilly. Brian, a lot of polls put this election closer than expected. What's your read on what Canadians are telling the pollsters right now?
Well, in many ways, they're telling them in an amplified form what they were telling pollsters ahead of time. As we talked about before the election was called, Hal, we saw everything from the Conservatives in the mid-20s to the low 30s, the Liberals from the low to mid-30s to the low 40s. It was all over the map. There was no consensus. And speaking to someone who's been in the polling game a long time, Darrell Bricker, the global CEO of Ipsos Public Affairs, he told me that the electorate was fragile, that it could break any way, that the fact that, his poll was showing a few points gap, others were showing double digits. He said, there's a lot of fluidity. People are moving around. The election's called, people focused in. And all of a sudden, you can't really say that Aaron O'Toole is lighting the world on fire because his polling numbers haven't gone up that much. But you can say that Justin Trudeau is lighting himself and the entire Liberal campaign on fire because their numbers are going down. O'Toole and Saint have come up a little bit. That's good for them. But bad news for the Liberals is they're polling down. Most polls are showing both the Liberals and the Conservatives within a couple of points of each other in the mid-30s, the low 30s. It ranges from 30, 32, 31, 33. The biggest gap you'll see is a 3 or a 4 point gap at this point, and the 4 point gap is the outlier at this point. So a lot of downward movement for the Liberals and voters waiting to see, if I'm not going to vote for them, where am I going to go?
So is there anything specific that's taken place during the Liberal campaign? You credit them with being solid campaigners, but so far, this campaign, Justin Trudeau has been all over the place.
So a couple of things. At the start of the campaign, he called it on the Sunday that Kabul fell in Afghanistan. And really, Afghanistan in many ways has dominated a lot of headlines for the government since this began. And I got to say, our rescue efforts of our former interpreters, contractors, people who helped and aided the Canadian government, even Canadian citizens, people who went back to bring over family members and weren't expecting the Taliban to take over Kabul so quickly. All of that rescue effort, all of the visuals that we're seeing, it's dogged the government, and their response has not been good. I wish it was. This is something I don't want them to fail on. I want them to succeed, but it has been exceedingly poor. On top of that, they thought that the whole question of why did you call the campaign and it's an early election, they thought, as I did, that would be a 1 or 2 day story. And yet we're not quite 15 days in, but we're 10 plus days in, and we're still talking about it. So this is something that nobody was expecting. So people are saying, why did you call the election? And the Liberals don't have a good answer. They don't even have a good answer for their campaign. Right now, the old saying in politics is you get the job you campaign for. And Justin Trudeau is campaigning as if he wants to be the opposition leader. He's campaigning against Aaron O'Toole, a guy he was supposed to beat handily. So I've been talking to Liberals. They know that their campaign's in trouble. They're hoping to get their platform out soon. The Prime Minister was in Hamilton the other day. He's off in Vancouver now. We'll see where he goes after this. But they need to get their platform out. They need to get their messages straight. And they need to stop talking about Aaron O'Toole so much because it's giving him an awful lot of advertising. Aaron O'Toole's positivity ratings in polls are going up, and Justin Trudeau's are going down.
Well, let's talk about Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole and his campaign for just a moment here, Brian. What is he doing right so far, and where do you think he might be a little more vulnerable?
So before the election campaign, a lot of people were saying, where's Aaron O'Toole? I don't see him. He's in hiding. He's not doing anything. No, we now know what he was doing. He was preparing. He was out doing runs all the time. He's lost a bunch of weight. He's very fit. He is focused. And so is his campaign. This is a guy who at 7 o'clock every morning, his social media platform is populated with a 30-second video elevator pitch. It's on whatever the message of the day is. So if they're talking housing affordability, that's the 30-second video that shows up. If they're talking protecting workers' pensions, which is one of their platforms that I think will be very popular on Main Street, not very popular on Bay Street, that's the video message that shows up. A news release goes out. There is a news conference later in the day, normally a rally at night or a telephone town hall where he talks to thousands and thousands of people. So this is a well-oiled machine so far. Things can change, but this, we're talking 10 or so days in. This is a very well-organized campaign. Compared to the Liberals, the visuals don't look good. They can't stay on message. O'Toole is staying on message. Where he has problems is the issue that the Liberals tried to knock him on, and that is private delivery of healthcare. He's got a very good answer. He's got to lean into it the way Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe did, and that is in saying, look, I'm not against private delivery of healthcare services like the private MRI clinics that have a 2-for-1 deal. For every 2 MRIs they do, they have to do 1 for the public sector. That's what they did in Saskatchewan. It cleared a backlog of more than 10,000 MRIs. That's like, how is that a bad thing? That's a good thing. He's got to lean into that and say he's not against private delivery of services. If people don't know, their family doctor is a private clinic. The abortion clinics that Trudeau talks about all the time needing funding are private clinics. So the Liberals aren't opposed to private delivery. They just want it for certain things. O'Toole has to own this issue. Otherwise, he will be vulnerable there.
Now, you feel that NDP leader Jagmeet Singh has also been running a fairly tight campaign, but not quite as tight as O'Toole. Can you explain?
His message delivery isn't as polished. Jagmeet Singh can be a good speaker off the cuff at times. Other times he fumbles around. And so, the other day, Justin Trudeau was in the very wealthy suburb of Ancaster. It's a suburb of Hamilton, Ontario, that is, he was surrounded by homes that cost $1.3 million and talking about housing affordability. Well, Jagmeet Singh was in Hamilton as well. And he was trying to make the point that, on housing affordability, very real issue, that, Trudeau's had 6 years. It took him 3 attempts to get the message out. He should have those lines down pat. He should be a bit better. When he's on, he's very good at delivering those. Other times, he can't get out the soundbite that he wants to deliver. Outside of that, the NDP got their platform out early. They're staying on message. They're delivering a policy of the day, much like the Conservatives, and they're getting some traction. Jagmeet Singh just has to become a bit more polished at how he delivers that message. Very interesting contrast between the 2 main opposition parties and the Liberals. 2 very disciplined campaigns and one that's still trying to find its footing.
Brian, let's talk about some of the other smaller parties, like the Maverick Party, Maxime Bernier's PPC, or the Green Party. Will they make any inroads this election campaign?
Well, the Green Party will probably make outroads, possibly right out of Parliament. I think they had 3 MPs going into the election. I don't know. They had 2. They had previously had 3, but one of them decided the party wasn't anti-Semitic enough and decided to join the Liberals. So that was a bizarre episode there. And since then, they've been at war with themselves over Israel and anti-Semitism. They elected a Black Jewish woman as their leader, and then suddenly all these people who are hardcore anti-Israel came out of the woodwork to fight her. So I think the Greens are going to be toast after this election. Not a bad thing. I've never found them to be much more than an Elizabeth May vanity project or a media creation at times. Maxime Bernier's People's Party, there's another vanity project. I don't expect it to go anywhere. We were told that they were going to make inroads in the last election, and there were polls that had them up high enough to get into the leaders' debates. But then they got, less than 2% of the vote? I don't expect them to do much better this time. The Maverick Party, that's a different story. Like the Bloc Québécois, it's regional-based, regional-focused. I know that Conservative MPs in Alberta and Saskatchewan, they're concerned. They're more concerned about that than anybody else or anything else, unless they're in one of the traditional NDP-type ridings. They see the Maverick as potentially pulling away enough votes that it could make things dangerous for them. But Maverick would be the only one. I don't see them electing an MP because they don't seem well organized enough, but we'll see how the campaign goes. As I always say, campaigns matter, and if somebody is a good local star, they might break out in the next couple of weeks, and you'll have to be on the ground to be able to see that.
We've actually interviewed Jay Hill, the interim party leader of the Maverick Party, and a lot of what he says resonates with us here in the West. Brian, let's circle back to Maxime Bernier for just a moment of the People's Party of Canada. He was recently denied admission to the televised leaders debate that you were discussing earlier. Some people refer to it as a bit of a snub. Is this not a problem in a democratic country?
No, I don't think so. I mean, the United States has televised debates all the time, and they're organized by a commission, as are ours now. and they don't invite every party to put up their candidate. I never would have allowed Elizabeth May on stage, and I'm not sure why the Bloc Québécois is ever in the English language debates. As a former Anglo-Quebecer, I lived there for a few years, and I'm an Anglophone. The Bloc Québécois does not attempt to get the votes of Anglophones, and the Anglophone votes they do get, they're from very strange people who have odd political views and don't like their own people living in Quebec. It's very strange. So, no, Elizabeth May shouldn't have been in. She never has had recognition as an official party in Parliament. Maxime Bernier got less than 2% of the vote last time. He's run in by-elections recently where he ran in one here in Toronto. I don't think he got more than 700 votes. So, if we started allowing everyone that got 700 votes to appear, we'd have the Communist Party of Canada, we'd have the Marxist-Leninist Party, you'd have 15 different leaders up there, and nobody would have any clue what was going on. My bigger problem is that we've gone to a debate commission selected by the government. That's something that I think is very problematic. Craig Kielburger was formerly on the debate commission until the whole WE scandal came about. I have real problems with partisans like that going on the debate commission.
Now let's talk a little policy here. One of the big issues is affordable housing, which you mentioned earlier. So many young people today, Brian, have no chance of buying a home, especially in regions like Vancouver and Toronto. Where do the party leaders stand on affordable housing?
Well, I'll tell you how. This is becoming an issue well outside of the core cities, and it's going pretty much everywhere in the country. When you lived here in Southern Ontario, it was a Toronto problem. Well, when Justin Trudeau was elected in 2015, the NDP pointed this out today. He was in Hamilton talking about affordable housing. When he was elected in 2015, the average home price in Hamilton was $415,000. That's an astronomical amount. It's now $882,000 6 years later. That's great if you bought in and you can sell and don't need to buy another house. That's horrible for anybody trying to get into the market or somebody trying to upgrade. Maybe you bought a starter home, your family's getting bigger. This is why this is such a big issue. Affordability in general, the cost of housing. So they've all promised to do one thing, and that is ban new foreign ownership. There's been a lot of money coming in from out of the country that sees real estate in Canada as an investment opportunity. There's also money coming in from overseas that sees Canada as a place to launder money through real estate, which is a real problem that law enforcement hasn't been able to get a handle on. And I don't think government has helped them yet in terms of dealing with that. So they've all promised that. The Conservatives have promised to, make as much as 15% of federal land, including some surplus buildings, available for housing. They're even talking about if there's an old office building they don't need and it can be converted into housing, maybe you turn it into apartments or condos or something. And they're talking about it in ways of affordable housing for people who are low income and need a place to rent and subsidies with that, but also affordable housing in terms of making it affordable for people to buy a home. The NDP is talking about social housing, co-ops, making that easier to do. Those are all very solid things. The Liberals talked about a number of things that had them referred to as criminalizing home owners. And the Real Estate Association in Ontario blasted them, saying they were going to use the criminal code to punish people who were just trying to sell their homes. So that's the one policy that fell flat among the three in terms of trying to fix what is a very real problem in Canada.
So, Brian, if the Conservatives do pull it off and win the election, maybe a minority government or a majority, do you think they would actually show support to our energy sector like Aaron O'Toole has said in the past and maybe roll back Bill C-68 and C-69, who many people still refer to as the anti-pipelines bill?
I call it the No More Pipelines bill, and I hope that he would. I think that he would. He has talked about that in the past, and people like me, my colleague in the Edmonton Sun, Lauren Gunter, we would be holding him to account to try and say, you've got to do this, you promised it. If we don't get rid of bills like that, there will be no more pipelines. And even if you believe in a totally green future, we're not there yet. We're going to continue to need oil. We're going to continue to need natural gas. We need to be able to provide these products to market. Canadian natural gas could be replacing coal plants in India and China. And, so if lowering global emissions is your issue, well, guess what? Sending liquefied natural gas to these Asian markets that still use a lot of coal is part of the answer. Shutting them down and allowing OPEC countries to spew out their oil with limited, if any, environmental concerns and conditions, that's not the answer.
Political reporter and Toronto Sun columnist Brian Lilly, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you, Hal.
Municipal elections will be taking place across Alberta on October the 18th. And today, we have the opportunity to speak with one of our mayoral candidates here in Lethbridge, Stephen Mogden. Stephen, welcome to Bridge City News.
Thanks very much, Hal. Nice to be here today.
Now, first of all, let's dive into exactly who Stephen Mogden is. What do you do for a living? Tell me about your connection to Lethbridge and why you decided to run for mayor.
Yeah, for sure. Again, thanks for having me, Hal. So I've been a Lethbridge resident for 20 years now, just a little over 20 years. I grew up in Calgary, but moved down to Lethbridge after I graduated from law school. I am married, have been for almost 24 years. We have two sons, one of whom is over 18. I'm a lawyer, so I've been practicing here in Lethbridge ever since I came to Lethbridge with Stringham Law, was previously Stringham Denicky. People might know that name. But yeah, I've been with the firm the whole time. I've been a partner here for more than 10 years. So that's what I do in my day job. The nice thing about being a lawyer here in town is that it affords you the ability to do some other things as well. And so I've always taken advantage of that and served my community on various boards. Currently, I'm sitting on the YMCA board and have been a past chair of that and been involved with that for going on about 6 years now. Previously, president of the Chamber of Commerce. I've been on the board for the Downtown Business Revitalization Zone for 2 terms, so 6 years altogether. I've been involved with the John Howard Society and with the Lethbridge Economic Recovery Task Force that Economic Development Lethbridge put together. So I've always been involved in my community and supporting my community and things that I think are important. And so that's probably the biggest reason that I wanted to run, was that serving in that capacity as mayor of Lethbridge would be kind of the biggest stage for me to be able to do that, to help my community. And I think it's going to be important.
Now, Stephen, you say you want to bring a positive and collaborative approach when it comes to leadership here in the city. Can you give an example of what you see as divisive leadership versus positive leadership?
Absolutely, Hal. So we don't really have to look very far to see an example of a divisive leadership situation on council. Really, the past 4 years, the past term of council has seen a lot of division, a lot of acrimony, a lot of personal attacks. And I think that's really unfortunate and something that people look at and wonder why that should be happening. And that's bad enough. But really, the bigger problem with that is that it prevents decisions from being made in a manner that best reflects the community. Now, I'm not saying that council should at all times be, in unanimity or have a full consensus on anything. There's always room for healthy debate. You'll always see that in any group of people. But when it comes to making decisions, what we've seen over the past is people forming into camps here on council and really getting entrenched and failing to continue listening to other ideas. And ultimately, that results in poorer decisions for our community. And well, that'll bring a long-term negative effect to us. So that's something where we need to work on that and be a lot more collaborative as we move forward on council.
Now, most people agree, Stephen, that there's a real need to help those struggling with addiction and homelessness here in our city. We still have the opioid crisis. Now, the supervised consumption site was a very divisive topic here in our city, with people strongly in favor and as well a lot of business owners strongly opposed. Where do you stand?
Absolutely. Well, with that supervised consumption site, there were some problems with how it was run. Its location might have been chosen a little better. That being said, I don't want to cast too much blame on previous decisions for that. because something had to happen fairly quickly with that. A lot of people tend to forget that we were dealing with a fairly unprecedented problem in terms of the opioid crisis hitting Lethbridge, and so something had to be done. Sometimes we'll see mistakes in execution when that takes place, but there needed to be something taking place and something into effect. So we did. I think a city that is as large as Lethbridge is going to have some issues with drug use. I think that's just to be expected with the size of population that we have, and because of that, I think we need to have supervised consumption services available to people. We do have some of that right now, but supervised consumption services need to be complemented by a number of other services. So you think of things like mental health supports, the ability to have detox services, rehabilitation recovery services, housing, transitional supportive housing. All of those things are necessary to really set people up to overcome what is a very, very difficult problem to overcome, and hopefully get towards success and being a very positive contributing member of our society. So we need to have those things in place. I would give some kudos to our provincial government for taking some steps recently in announcing some funding for a facility out in the county, but close enough that it should benefit Lethbridge residents. We need to have some more of that as we move forward.
Let's talk about a potential dry site similar to the proposal that the Mustard Seed recently brought forward. Now, do you think there are some potential places in our city where this could work? And maybe have this dry site work with organizations like Streets Alive and the Soup Kitchen?
Well, and certainly, Hal, I think we need to have a range of services available for people. Some people will not find a lot of success with a dry site, but some people will. And that can fill a definite need for people. So I think we need to look at having those things in place. I think we need to make sure that we are locating those carefully and going about it in a very deliberative and collaborative manner. It's something where we need to make sure that we are engaging our community, engaging our community leaders to find suitable sites, having a dialogue with people that are going to be affected by that site, whether it's a neighbor, whether it's somebody that is in the area for services or what have you. We need to make sure that that's something that's not just sort of dropped on a location. And part of that is having a broader conversation with the community so that the rest of the community understands why it's being chosen for wherever it's being suggested for, what the benefits are and what the drawbacks are. I mean, you tend to see people leap to conclusions about what a site, whether it's a dry site or not, what a site like that is going to bring with it. And in some cases, that just really sort of clouds the discussion and prevents having some success in finding a place that's going to work for the community.
Stephen, Stats Canada says when it comes to crime severity index, it's really not good news for Lethbridge. We're number one, especially when it comes to petty crime. Explain your vision as potential mayor for our city on cutting down on crime.
For sure, always a difficult subject to crack. That being said, I think that the same crime severity index report that was just released also shows that things are improving in Lethbridge in terms of benchmarking us from this year compared to last year, and then looking forward. We need to assess what the effect of bringing in a new police chief and having him get his legs under him and the department working as he wants it to be working, the effect that that's going to have as well. But greater than that, Hal, I think we need to make sure that we are making a serious attempt to provide support for people in our community. We have a lot of people that struggle with various issues, and crime tends to stem from those issues, the mental health issues, the addictions issues. That's really why those crime activities take place.
Now let's talk about the $1 million that was cut from the Lethbridge police budget. Would you put $1 million back in to help Chief Shaheen Medizadeh and his officers keep our streets safe?
I think it's something that we need to constantly have a discussion about. Policing is a very large budget item in any city, and Lethbridge is no different than that. As we move forward, we need to make sure that we are addressing what the department needs when they need it. Whether that means that we're replacing some or all of that $1 million budget, that's a decision that the council is going to have to come up with. It's not something that I can say right at this point that will definitely be needed or not. But as we move forward, we're going to have to look at where our police funding is going and where it's come from. The reality is, if you cut $1 million out of a budget, that's going to have some impacts. So we need to look at what that looks like as we move forward.
Let's talk about a potential third bridge for the west side over the Oldman River. Lethbridge Mayor Chris Spearman says because all of it's in Lethbridge, none of it's on provincial land. 13% property tax increase. Alberta, Lethbridge residents will have to foot the bill for the entire bridge. What are your thoughts on that? Do we need a third bridge here in Lethbridge, in the city?
We may. And I'm sorry to be, I don't know if you would call that evasive or not, but I think what we really need to do, Hal, is take a look at what are the costs, what are the traffic flows. I mean, does it make sense for us to have that now? Does it make sense for us to be planning for that in the next 5 years or 10 years? There's a lot of issues at play here, budget issues, growth issues. I tend to think myself that a third bridge would foster growth and would encourage movement between the west side and the south side. And I think by itself, that is ultimately a good thing, but it has to make sense for us economically. We need to make sure that, are we able to get grants to go towards that from the different orders of government? If so, maybe that is something that we can look at putting in place sooner rather than later. Eventually, we'll need it. I mean, it's just that simple. Whether we're there yet now, that remains to be seen.
You've gone on record saying that inclusion and reconciliation are very important to you, Stephen. Can you share what an inclusive city looks like in your view?
Absolutely. So any community is made up of a myriad of people, and they have different abilities and different challenges. And so a community, I think, is ultimately judged on how well it deals with people who face those challenges. And that comes about in various ways, right? Some people have difficulty with things like housing. Some people have difficulties with maybe language issues if they're an immigrant from another community. Some people may have difficulty in facing a job interview or finding suitable work for their abilities. All of those things are things that we as a community need to look at, making sure that we are bringing those people in as best we can. And the city, I think, can play a key role in supporting organizations that interface with those people and making sure that if you are a Lethbridge resident and you want to be involved, whether it's employment, volunteer activities, whatever the case may be, you have the ability to do that and you don't face additional barriers.
Now, when people think of Lethbridge, they not only think of the legendary wind here, but also agriculture. Some say we should not put all of our apples into the ag basket, but diversify like other cities are doing. Outside of agriculture, what other business do you think we should attract to our city to help boost our local economy?
Well, so too, Hal, one of which I think is tourism. I think we can be doing a lot more on tourism, sport tourism, and taking advantage of the many great sites that we have in Lethbridge, around Lethbridge, close to Lethbridge. So that's one. Another that you traditionally look at is technology, right? Technology services that don't necessarily need to be located in one place or another. That's something that we can look at trying to attract and foster here in Lethbridge. I mean, we have a great potential that we are, currently realizing on in terms of our role in the agri-food sector, and that's wonderful for Lethbridge, right? Like you say, if you put all your eggs in one basket, you might face some difficulties with that. So I think it is good for any community to diversify its economy.
Stephen Mogden is one of the mayoral candidates in Lethbridge, and he's hoping for your vote on October the 18th. Stephen, thanks so much for your time today.
Thanks very much, Hal. Always a pleasure.
On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless, and thanks for watching.